on AFR Talk. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at onenewsnow.com. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us anytime at focalpoint@afr.net. focalpoint@afr.net.
And you are listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher, but I'm obviously not Brian Fisher. You're so astute if you've already picked up on that. I am Dr. Gina Loudon, your guest host for today. Honored to be with you. You can find out more about me at Doc G TV or Facebook or Twitter at Dr. Gina Loudon. You can also find my work at WorldNet Daily. Now, I am one of those people that relishes the thought of as my feet hit the floor in the morning, Satan says, oh no, it's her. Because I want to rip apart his lies day in and day out and have fun doing it. And that's what I'm hoping to do here with you. The theme of the show today is lies, because there are so many lies. We've become a culture, really, of lies. Is there any path back to a culture of truth? That's what we're looking at. So we're starting out by asking you to be honest with us and tell us your toughest question. What is that one thing that stands between you and 100% faith? My guest, Bob Siegel. He is a graduate of Denver Seminary and San Jose State University. I heard him when I went to church one day. Unbeknownst to me, here's this guy standing up there answering all my toughest questions at my own church, Skyline Church here in San Diego. He has two great books called A Call to Radical Discipleship and also I'd Like to Believe in Jesus, but I just put a call out on Twitter for atheists to call in and ask their toughest question, and I'm going to make you a bet right now. Not one of them will. They won't ask the tough questions because they're afraid of the truth. But you're not afraid of the truth, and that's why you have filled up our phone lines for Bob Siegel and I as we approach your toughest questions. Going to go first to Matthew. He has a question about the gospel. Matthew, welcome to Focal Point.
Hey, thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. What's your question for Bob?
Okay, my question is, what is the gospel? I know that's a very wide thing. A lot of people say that it's death, burial, and resurrection, but I don't think it is because, I'm kind of like going between both. You know, I know it's about death, burial, and resurrection, but also when Jesus sent the 2 out by 2 to proclaim the kingdom of the gospel, they were preaching the gospel back then, but if you look in chapter, I think, 16, Jesus actually rebuked Peter when, Peter actually rebuked Jesus when Jesus told him that he was going to have to die. So I don't think it was them preaching, hey, Jesus is going to die. I think it was something else. So I was just wondering if he could answer that question for me.
Thanks for your call, Matthew. Bob?
I'd be happy to. The gospel literally means good news, and it's the good news that we will be completely delivered from sin. Now, that includes the fact that we're going to have a resurrected life and be forgiven our sin. It does include that Jesus will die on the cross and rise from the dead. But getting back to the idea that Peter had difficulty understanding, Jesus kept trying to explain that part to them. But the Jews were more keyed in on another side of the gospel. They had a concept of Jesus coming as the Messiah. That meant one anointed, one sent from God who was going to deliver the Israelites from their enemies. Now, living under oppressive Roman rule was being the victim of somebody else's sin. So when Jesus says he wants to deliver you from sin, he not only means the sin you've committed, but he means sin committed against you. That could include psychological scars from the way one was brought up. That could include the oppression of a demon. That could include the oppression of a disease. That could include the oppression of a government. When we get to heaven, we will be free from sin and free from death. We will be forgiven of the sins we've committed, but also in heaven there will not be murderers. There will not be people who can do us harm. So it is a complete delivery from sin across the board, whereas the ancient Jews kind of ignored half of that gospel, the half that their prophet Isaiah warned them about the Messiah dying for their sins. Today's evangelical church kind of ignores the Jewish half. We tend to stress Christ died on the cross for you, and we tend to not stress the part about him delivering us from sins that we commit. So absolutely, there's a fullness to the gospel. It's a two-sided coin, delivery from sin that I've committed and also delivery from sin committed against me.
Bob, thank you so much for that. Matthew, again, thank you for your call. It's hard to squeeze these in because these are answers that deserve such great exploration, but our phone lines are full. We're going now to Lisa from Richmond, Virginia. Lisa, what is your question for Bob today?
I have a question about sin and original sin. So many of the little hang-ups that I have, or you said like the one thing you can't reconcile,
Right.
have to do with, the answer to them seems to be that we're in a fallen world, like because Adam and Eve decided to sin, and, that moment when sin entered the world, or, when we knew it or whatever. Well, I thought to myself, if they back in the garden were like, I want to disobey God, I think I want to do this anyway. If they had the thought that I want to go against God, I thought to myself, isn't that sinful? And that means that sin kind of was in the world before they ate of the fruit or whatever,
Ooh, Lisa, that's a good question. I like that one. Let's give Bob a chance at that. Go ahead.
I had a little bit of trouble understanding. Was she asking was she suggesting that Adam and Eve?
She was saying that every time we talk about sin in the world, we're saying, oh, well, this is from the fall. But if it's from the fall, what about the very moment where the original sin took place? What was their reason for sin? Does that make sense? Because that can't have been from the fall because, So was there already sin in the world at the time of the fall?
Well, the Bible teaches that we, as descendants of Adam and Eve, are sinners by nature and by choice. Now, the nature we inherited from Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were not sinners by nature, but they were only sinners by choice. After they chose to sin, they inherited a sin nature. The sin nature is not some whammy that God puts on a baby when it's born, but it merely means that God withdrew his presence and his spirit from Adam and Eve, and we as their descendants are born with a dead and broken spirit and an empty vacuum where the Spirit of God is supposed to be. Now, when the Bible says that we're also sinners by nature, it's very interesting. In Romans chapter 5, Paul's arguing with kind of a rhetorical skeptic who's suggesting that had he been around in the Garden of Eden, he might not have committed the sin that Adam did. And Paul says, well, yes, you have. He says the law was added that the trespass might increase. When I want to see an example of being a sinner by nature, I just look at my thoughts. I can't control my thoughts. I don't have a button on my side I can push to change my thoughts. I can control my actions. I'm very aware that if I say something insulting or do something to harm somebody, it's something I did not have to do. When I find myself choosing to sin, I'm doing the same thing that Adam and Eve did. I may not be in the garden while I'm doing it, but I am making a choice. But when I'm finding myself the victim of some bad motive or bad feeling, that I cannot help. So God understands that there's nothing we can do about having been born as sinners by nature. There is something we can do about being sinners by choice. The good news is that Jesus died to deliver us from all sins, the sins we commit by nature and by choice.
That's a fascinating topic, and I'm glad you answered it. That really, I've never heard that question before. We're going now to Marcus from Louisiana. He's got a question about new heaven and earth. Marcus, what is your question for Bob Siegel?
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hey, Marcus.
I'm enjoying the show, and I've enjoyed shows in the past. I think I can reconcile some of the concerns that the host had earlier about, enjoying oceans and what we see our pets. And me personally, I love oceans also and mountains. I think, by the way, I'm a Bible teacher at my local area, and there Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, and he taught us to pray for his kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. And Peter said that there'll be a new heaven and a new earth. And I think that on that new earth, there's going to be animals and oceans and all that without the crime, and it'll be like heaven on earth. And I wonder, why doesn't the church teach enough about the earth as they do heaven?
Oh,
that's an interesting question, Marcus. Bob, what do you say about that?
Well, the church probably should teach a little more about the earth. What we tend to do as people is, sometimes overreact. The environmentalists have gotten so wacko when they claim that animals and trees are just as important to God as people are. But that doesn't mean we have to react so far in the other direction that we come to the conclusion that animals and trees aren't important at all. They are important. Like you were saying earlier, Gina, there is a spiritual experience by being near an ocean or being with an animal that you love. And so Christians should, in a healthier way, perhaps a more balanced way, they should also express concern for the environment. And absolutely, God did put human beings here to have dominion over the earth and to be a caretaker over the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, really quick, I'm hoping we can get another question in. We're going to Johnny from from Arizona. Sixth day of creation, his question is. Johnny, welcome to the show. Bob Siegel's, the question you have for Bob Siegel, please.
Yeah, I'm in Arkansas. Yeah, the basic question I have, being missionary Baptist, we take the Bible very literal, so I haven't been able to get a lot of help on this, but the sixth-day creation, was that God telling Moses, first I done this, then I done this, or is it 6 literal days? And in Genesis, when God says to replenish the earth, the word replenish to me means something was there and you're putting something back.
Well, there are a lot of different theories about Genesis. There are some Christians that believe there was creation that predated Adam and Eve. It would be nice if we had a little more information there. I do know this. I would gladly trade 20 chapters in Leviticus for more information about how God created the world. But, what we do know is that the author of the book of Hebrews spoke of the seventh day, the day God rested, as a day that continues. And he certainly didn't believe that the seventh day was a literal 24-hour day. So it's possible, and I'm just saying possible, that the first 6 days were not literal either. Having said that, I do know a lot of young Earth creationists. They give very compelling arguments for a young Earth, and I think people should listen to what they have to say. But I would say that if that's what's holding somebody up, I don't know that we necessarily have to come to that conclusion.
All right. Thank you so much for your question, Johnny. Thanks to all of you for your questions, and thank you for your great answers. Bob Siegel, get his books, A Call to Radical Discipleship, and I'd Like to Believe in Jesus. But thank you so much for being with us today, Bob Siegel. Coming up.
Gina, it's always a pleasure.
All right, my friend. If age is wisdom, then who better to ask for the secrets of success than 500 centenarians? We're going to talk with the man who did that up next right here on Focal Point on AFR Talk. Stay tuned.